Okay, so I want to talk about how Stoicism can help us deal with the pandemic, both under lockdown and the current restrictions in our various countries and afterwards, when we hope we will go back to normal, or what people are calling the new normal. Much that I'll be saying is similar to ideas explored more fully in this year's Stoic Week handbook on Stoicism during the pandemic. So we hope if you haven't already registered for Stoic Week this year, you might want to do this before we start on Monday. And look for this on the Modern Stoicism website. Although the pandemic has been very difficult for many people, there have been some positives. Some of us, at least, have been forced by the situation to behave in more stoic ways. We've shown more resilience in the face of problems. We've acted in a more neighbourly and public-spirited way, helping those who are more badly affected than us. And we've also behaved, especially early in lockdown, in a more environmentally responsible way, with less car driving and big reductions in flying with its big carbon footprint, and a significant improvements in air quality. But what happens next as we go on dealing with the pandemic, or as things are eased? Does all this stoic behavior go by the board as we get back to normal or get used to the situation? I hope not. The current crisis gives all of us a chance to reassess the way we behave and to bring our actions closer to our ideals and aspirations. Stoicism provides a framework that can enable us to act in this way deliberately and consistently, and not just as a response to the pressure of the pandemic and the lockdown. How can Stoicism help us take forward some of the best practices of lockdown? First, by practicing some of the Stoic exercises on a regular basis. And second, by reflecting on key Stoic ethical ideas underlying those exercises. And during the time I have with you, I'm going to focus on three themes: promoting resilience, neighbourliness and a sense of community, and environmental responsibility. In this way, as we put it in the Stoic Week handbook, Stoicism can help us take care of ourselves, our other people, and the world. So the first topic, which you've probably encountered earlier today, is resilience, promoting resilience. And the first exercise then is exercising the dichotomy of control. So what can promote resilience? Exercising the dichotomy of control, distinguishing between what is and what is not in our control, and focus on doing properly what we can actually affect, and accepting that a great deal does not fall within our power. As Epictetus puts it, some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not in our power are our body, our property, reputation, status, and in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. Distinguishing between the two kinds of things is crucial for making proper choices, for managing emotions, and responding to difficult and troubling situations with resilience. Marcus Aurelius gives a beautiful illustration of this point as he urges himself to respond to the kind of setbacks we call bad luck. This is a passage which Tom cited earlier. Be like the headland on which the waves break constantly, which stands firm while the foaming waters are put to rest about it. He imagines someone saying, "It is my bad luck this has happened to me." And he tells himself to say, on the contrary, say, "It is my good luck that although this has happened to me, I can bear it without getting upset, neither crushed by the present nor afraid of the future. Again, talking to himself, surely what has happened cannot prevent you from being just, high-minded, self-controlled, thoughtful, self-respecting, free, and the other qualities whose presence enables human nature to maintain its character. In other words, what is within our power is to try to practice the virtues. What is not in our power is to avoid all the problems and difficulties that we call bad luck. Well, how does this help us in the pandemic and afterwards? One of the very disturbing things about the pandemic is that there is so much in the situation that none of us can control, that it's easy to fall into panic and despair. This makes it even more pressing to try to distinguish between what we can and cannot control. In fact, even in this situation, there are some things that we can all do and that do fall within our power. We can all follow government rules or medical advice about social distancing, about hand washing, wearing masks, avoiding social gatherings, and so on. Now, all this may seem little enough, but if this advice is consistently followed, as it has been in some countries with far fewer fatalities than the UK or the USA, for instance, it can help to keep the virus at bay. And thus we can extend the scope of what falls within our collective power. So what is within our power and not can be varied by what we actually do collectively. Also, if we accept the situation in a realistic but rational way, we can work out strategies for carrying on doing things that we think are important for our work, our well-being, and that of our families and friends, even though what we can do is different from what we did before. And if we can do this consistently, then, like Marcus Aurelius, we can turn bad luck into good luck. We can turn a difficult situation into one in which we can work towards expressing the virtues, especially the four classic virtues recognized by Stoicism: wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. In fact, there have been some outstanding examples of courageous and other benefiting behavior during the pandemic, especially by health workers risking or losing their lives. But although we may not all be moral heroes, we can try to exercise virtue in our own sphere of life. Recognizing the distinction between what is and is not in our power is the first move in this process and the key to finding resilience in the pandemic and afterwards. So that's the first theme I wanted to look at: resilience and the pandemic. The second is this: promoting neighbourliness and a sense of the human community. Another positive feature of people's behaviour during lockdown has been a revived sense of neighbourliness. Shut up in their houses and apartments, some people have been more aware of the people around them and more ready to be friendly and helpful to them. This has often been commented on by people. Also, we have been forcibly reminded how interdependent we are in our communities, our countries, and indeed globally. Our state of health, whether or not we get infected, has depended on the behavior of others, just as their chance of being infected has depended on how we act. This sense of community is something that has been forced on us by the situation. But again, Stoicism can provide a framework for building on this positive feature and doing so in a considered and rational way. People interested in applying Stoicism to their lives sometimes stress only the fact that it enables you to be resilient as an individual, to work for your own peace of mind and to create what Marcus Aurelius calls the inner citadel. And that is one side of Stoicism, as I've just illustrated. It provides the basis for taking care of yourself. But the ancient Stoics also stressed the social, other-related side of human life. They regarded human beings as being the kind of animals who are fundamentally both rational and sociable. The Stoics saw care for others as an inbuilt human motive, as natural to us as the instinct to care for ourselves. The best way to care for ourselves, to care for oneself, in the Stoic view, is to develop the virtues and to work towards a happiness that's based on virtue. And that's also, as the Stoics see it, the best way to express your instinct to care for others. Here is an exercise often used in modern Stoicism to promote a sense of community based on advice offered by the Stoic Heracles, contracting the circles of relationship. Think of yourself as being at the center of a series of relationships. Your immediate family, closest to you, then your extended family, then friends, neighbors, and work colleagues, members of the same neighborhood or organization, those living in the same city or region, members of the same state, foreigners, including refugees and asylum seekers. Work on trying to reduce the circles, giving to the outer circle the same importance and emotional weight that we would to the one inside it, treating neighbors like friends or family members, treating foreigners as fellow citizens, work colleagues, or members of your family. Try applying to the outer circle the same names as you would give to the one inside. So foreigners become fellow Brits or fellow Australians or fellow Americans. How can this exercise help us during the pandemic or as things ease and we work out what should count as the new normal? In thinking about this topic, we need to take it alongside the first one on what is and is not in our power. Many of our normal patterns of relationship with family, friends, and work colleagues have become difficult or impossible. And we're all having to work out what is and is not in our power and how to maintain our relationships under difficult circumstances. What Heracles' circles offer us is, first of all, a kind of mental map of our patterns of relationships, even if we're not in close physical contact with those in the inner circles at this moment. This mental map may be helpful in counteracting a sense of isolation. These circles exist, even if we're not in direct contact with the people that we care about. They are still in the circles that we have. Also, I think Heracles' advice about contracting the circles can help us make more of the relationships that we can do something about. So here are some questions we can ask ourselves to help put the circles exercise into practice. Are there some specific, achievable ways in which we can make more of our relationships at present than we normally do? Are there ways in which we can lend more practical or emotional help to our colleagues than we usually do? Can we cooperate more closely than usual with our work colleagues, for instance, in working with them, and our employers, if we're able to do so, about work patterns now and after the pandemic? Can we contribute to trying to create a framework for work and home life that is better suited than the previous one to living a well-balanced and humane way of life? As we think about these questions, it's worth trying to keep hold of the awareness we have now that we're very much part of a larger human community in our country and worldwide, and to use that to counteract narrowness of outlook and concern, and to remember that, as the Stoics believed, we're part of the same human family and co-citizens of the world that we all share. The third topic I want to look at is that promoting environmental responsibility. During the early stages of the pandemic especially, many of us found we were forced to behave in a more sustainable way. There was less car use, less commuting, less travel, less leisure travel, and much less flying, and there still is. As a result, there was a significant reduction in CO2 emissions, which are a major factor in global warming and climate breakdown. And there was a big improvement in air pollution in and around cities. It wasn't actually by itself enough to keep emissions down to a sustainable level. As environmentalists keep telling us, we need to do all we can to keep global warming down to 1.5 degrees C more than pre-industrial levels. That is, we actually need to go further than the targets of the Paris Accords. And we need to introduce measures to enable this as soon as possible. Although the worst effects of climate breakdown will come later in the century, the window of opportunity for effective reduction in global warming is very short if we're to have any realistic chance of preventing those consequences later in the century. And we need to do this in a more systematic, worldwide way than we've done under the pandemic. And it will involve large-scale changes in how we act, as well as technological changes. However, the pandemic has shown that if people really see the need for action, they can change their behavior on a worldwide basis and do it very quickly. What has all this got to do with Stoicism, you might say? Isn't global warming, like the pandemic, one of the things that lies outside our power to control and that we just have to accept? I don't think this is right. Although it's true that the timescale for effective environmental action is very tight. Also, I think we have good Stoic reasons for wanting to live more sustainable lives and to encourage our communities and our governments to act constructively and quickly. Stoicism tells us that our happiness in life depends on living in accordance with the virtues, especially the four cardinal virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. For a modern Stoic, I don't think we can say that we're really trying to act virtuously if we don't do everything in our power to respond to the most important challenge and problem facing us today, with potential effects much more wide-ranging and much more severe than the current pandemic. Also, Stoicism stresses the idea that we are fundamentally part of the natural universe, part of the natural world, and that we should try and live our lives in accordance with the order, which is built into the world, into the natural world as it is. Marcus again conveys this idea with great power. One should always keep in mind these things, what the nature of the whole is, and what my nature is, and how my nature is related to that of the whole, and what kind of part it is of what kind of whole, and that no one can prevent me from always doing and saying what is in accordance with nature, of which I am a part. So acting in an environmentally sustainable way helps us to do what Marcus is urging himself to do. That is, acting in accordance with nature, of which I am a part. Stoics believe that the world and the universe have an inbuilt order and structure. Even though, as modern thinkers, we may not share the Stoic worldview in other respects, we can still see global warming as a breakdown of the natural order, with terrible implications for human beings, as well as for animals and plants. So a Stoic response is to use the rationality that's part of what it means to be human in doing what we can, preserving the natural environment of which we form an integral part. Well, what, in practical terms, does this involve? Well, let's take a simple example. Booking a mini break holiday flight for our family to an attractive but distant overseas location, involving unnecessary CO2 emissions and contributing to global warming. Of course, at the present, this might not be possible. At lots of places we can't fly. But it could be one of the things that we're looking forward to after the pandemic. However, in Stoic terms, this is not a good idea for several reasons. If we did this, we would be failing to exercise the four virtues. We wouldn't be acting wisely or with good judgment in the light of the environmental damage. We wouldn't be acting justly in that our actions would have a harmful effect on the environment for other people as well as for ourselves, people that we should be seeing as fellow members of the community of humankind. Instead, we could act in a way that falls within our power and plan a holiday that doesn't involve travel at all, or very much travel, and which also enables us to explore our own location and see what it has to offer. Doing so might take courage. It might require us to show the courage of our convictions, even if it disappoints family or friends looking forward to the trip. It would also involve exercising self-control or moderation as we give up something pleasurable we're looking forward to. So overall, then, and this is my conclusion, there are three things we can do as modern Stoics during and after the pandemic. We can work on building up resilience by distinguishing what is and is not in our power, and by developing the virtues which are always in our power. We can aim to keep up our neighbourliness and sense of community by trying to contract the circles of our relationships and seeing all human beings as brothers and sisters and fellow citizens in the universe. And we can aim to lead a more environmentally responsible life by thinking of ourselves as an integral part of nature as a whole, and by aiming to maintain and preserve the order of nature. And we can also sign up to Stoic Week on a more practical level, particular level next week to work on these and other Stoic practices and ideas. Okay, well, I've finished early, but that's all I had to say. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you for all the people who've worked so hard to bring this Stoic on to you.